But today, you're going to be blessed because our executive pastor of ministries, Pastor Gennarino DeStefano, who we affectionately call Pastor G, he's going to be sharing God's word with us. And listen, it's Valentine's Day. And when you think about Valentine's Day, you think about our desire and need for intimacy. So Pastor G is going to share an amazing message about intimacy with God, something that we're all seeking to grow in. So we love Pastor G. I know that you do too. So let's give Pastor G that really loud, really joyful, really overwhelming Crossroads welcome. Let's go for it.
Morning, everyone. So maybe you can relate to this. Perhaps there's a time in your life, maybe you were in high school or younger, or maybe even now or in college, when you had a relationship with someone and it was in the friend zone and you kind of wish that it would go deeper than that. Maybe it happened to you even now, but perhaps it's happened in your relationship with your adult children. Along the way, as you reared them and had difficult times along the way, and now they're adults, and it's become birthdays and holidays, a card, and some conversations, but it doesn't go much deeper than the things that are right here, right now. The weather, a sports team or something. Maybe it's a mother-daughter thing. Maybe it's a son-father thing, but it's not as deep as you'd like it to be. And you see other people that enjoy such relationships where they're relaxed and they're having fun and they're real with one another, and it's something that maybe you long for. Or the worst is when this is going on in a marriage, where both parties are fulfilling their roles, the kids are being taken care of, the paychecks are coming in, but there's something that's a little distant. It's polite and respectful, but it's just not where it should be. And you've gotten some books, and maybe you've gone to a counselor, and then you've come to an agreement that this is just the way it is, and you really don't like that. And you wish that it would go further, go deeper. If you've never had this experience, eventually you will. This is part of living in a broken world. Now, as I've prepared for this message through this week, my prayer was, it's kind of the cliche that it would go from the head to the heart, but can we break out of the cliche of that and really think in terms of getting this message? Because this is kind of a bedrock kind of a thing, especially on a day like today. And what we're going to find is throughout the Old and New Testament, the Bible, from cover to cover, we find this situation where God is longing for a greater, deeper, more intimate relationship with His creation. So today we're going to be in 3 different places in the Bible. Revelations chapter 3, John 16, and 1 Corinthians 2. Revelation 3, John 16, and 1 Corinthians 2. We see this story laid out in the father, in the scenario of the prodigal son. And the father wants a more rich, deep relationship, and the son is like, I'm going to go do my own thing. And he goes his own way, but the father never gives up on him. Or we see where the good shepherd is herding over the sheep, and the sheep are constantly getting lost. Or we see in the garden, in the beginning, where God created the heavens and the earth in all of its magnificence, the rivers and the canyons and the falls and the sequoia trees and all of these great and fabulous and noble creations. But above all those things, His masterpiece of creation, he made man. And He made man higher than all of creation, because the capacity that we have, it reflects who God is. It's His image. We as humans have the ability to make decisions. We as humans have the ability to forgive. And more than all of that, we have the capacity to love. And that is an attribute of God that we endure and we enjoy, but most of creation does not have. Now, you might think that your dog loves you, but he's really acting out a thing that's kind of like, what he really wants is food, and he's learned that if he acts like he loves you, then you give him food. So that's kind of a whole other story, but he's got you played there. But all of this, the Lord wants a relationship with us that's deeper, that's not just respectful, that's not casual, it's not uncomfortable, it's not just showing up and sitting in a row. It's characterized by the word intimacy. Now here in Revelations 3, we find an interesting scenario. The Apostle John, at the time that he wrote, he's the author of the book of Revelation. At the time that he wrote this, he was the last remaining of the 12 disciples alive. This is about, they say it's about somewhere around 60 years after the resurrection. John is a very, very old man. And most of the book of Revelation is given out of visions that John received. Now, the book of Revelation has a lot of incredible imagery, and many movies and books have been written about this. Now, if you're brand new to the Bible, you certainly don't want to start by reading the book of Revelation. It'll keep you up at night, and it doesn't go well. But you need help on that. So be careful with that. But as John is in the beginning, first couple of vignettes, he's talking to these 7 churches that exist at the time. And it's words from Jesus about how the churches are doing. And there are 7 of them spread about the Mediterranean and the Middle East. And we're going to zero in on this one church. It's called the Church of Laodicea. And what the church in Laodicea had was they had good works, but they kept God at a distance. It wasn't really an intimate relationship. They were not going to let him go to the level of relationship that he wants to go. So Revelation 3:15 starts this way. I know your works, that you are neither hot or cold. I wish you were either hot or cold, so then because you are lukewarm and neither hot or cold, I will vomit you out of my mouth. That's a little disgusting, and it's kind of weird to start off the morning on Valentine's Day talking about this, but God is out of sorts with these people. He's wishing that they were either passionately in love with him or just leaving it alone, but the in-between was the thing that caused him to say this sort of thing. If you drop down to verse 17, it says, because you say, I am rich and have become wealthy and have need of nothing, you do not know that you are wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and naked. You see, we think sometimes that while things are going well for us, that also things are going well between us and the Father. And that just may not necessarily be true. Verse 18 is a cultural sort of local thing. He talks about things that are going on there in Laodicea that has to do with what they're doing. But then verse 19 says, as many as I love, I rebuke and chasten. Therefore, be zealous and repent. And then this unbelievable imagery. Verse 20, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and dine with him and he with me. This is unbelievable imagery. This is Jesus at the door of the Laodicean church. And he's there on the outside. And you'd think it's like, are you going to huff and puff and blow the house in? I mean, you're a little upset, but no. He's standing on the outside of the door knocking, looking to be invited in. My friends, this is something that sets Christianity apart. The central figure is on the outside, politely and gentlemanly knocking, looking to be invited in. You see, the Lord can force us to fear him. He can force us to obey him. He can take our children. He could wreck our finances. He could ruin our business if he wants to, but he will not. He will not force you to love him. He wants in, not like I want to be talked about. He wants to be in, like truly in on the inside in an intimate way, in a loving relationship. And when we sometimes get caught in the routine of churchianity, we'll find ourselves in a decoy, in a caricature of what God really desired. When we settle for religion instead of relationship, we treat God respectfully, but not intimately. And it's an empty substitute for the real thing. It becomes a formula. Go to church, check. Read the Bible occasionally, check. Sin and find your way outside of what you know is pleasing to God, and you pray the prayer, God, please forgive me for what I've done. I know is not right. And then you imagine that God takes out the big eraser and erases all of your sins, and then like the men in black, he'll zap his memory, and then it all disappears. And then it starts all over again. You go to church, you read a little Bible, you sin, you pray the prayer, and it becomes kind of like a formula again and again. And all the denominations have some sort of formula. In the tradition that I grew up in the Catholic tradition, it's like if you had a bad weekend, you had to say 25 Our Fathers, or it's a really bad weekend, it's 50 Our Fathers, and there's never an end to it, and it's always kind of like, I hope it's enough. But it's a formula nonetheless. But now this is not just the church in Laodicea. This is not an American problem. This is not a Pacific Northwest problem, nor is it even a Crossroads problem necessarily. It's a human problem. We fall in this way. This is what happens. We get part of a routine, and we get part of a ritualistic thing with God, and it ends up falling into religion. And religious people are very self-centered. It becomes not about God anymore, it becomes more about me. It's all about how to find the right combination of my obedience and my attendance and my good conscience to leverage God to get in on what I want to do for me here and now. And it's not about heaven that we're going to talk about in a minute. It's all about now. It's all about keep me healthy, keep me wealthy, keep my kids healthy, make sure my kids have jobs so that they can get out of the house. Then it's about the grandkids, but it's all about my thing and what it turns into? It turns into my life, my way with Jesus tacked on the end. That's not intimacy. That's far short of what God desires. It's polite, it's respectable, it's kind, but it's distant. It's religion, it's a formula. A way to get God in on my deal. But it gets worse. As we grow older and we stay in this format of a formula for our relationship with God, we become judgmental. And we become judgmental because we know that God has decided that he likes things a certain way and he doesn't like certain other things. And when we see people doing the things we know he doesn't like, we decide we don't like them because they're ungodly. So you don't like them. And sometimes you want to do the things that they're doing, and then you hate them. That's what happens. That's what happens as time goes by and you're stuck in religion. You become judgmental. And judgmental people begin to hate other people and isolate and go inbred and inward. Some of you, your greatest pain had to do with something happened along in your life, and it had to do with the church bumping you out because you didn't fit in anymore. Let's face it, let's be real and honest here. Almost all the people in our community that are not here this morning, that don't go to church, they've seen church. They've decided they don't want it. What they've come in and seen is routine and ritual and judgmental people that are rigid, and their words, somehow we've become the haters. They've decided they don't want it because it's supposed to be about love, but religion is not about love. Religion is about trying to harness the power of God for me, and ultimately it becomes very self-centered. Turn to John 16. Here's what Jesus said about religious people, beginning in verse 2. They will put you out of the synagogue. In fact, the time is coming when anyone who kills you will think they are offering God a service. This is where religion goes. Now, not too many years ago, this would be ludicrous, but we know that this is where it goes. We see this across many parts of the world right now. Zeal in religion, when you are not in relationship with the true God, it becomes more extreme and more zealous, and that zeal leads to hate, and that hate leads to atrocities. If you stay religious long enough and keep God at a distance long enough, you'll begin to get disoriented and create God in your own image. You'll get to the point where people will kill and think they're doing God a service. And it's like, way to go. Put a star next to your name, a special reward for you. That's religion. That's where it goes. Listen to John 16:3, Jesus' explanation of why things go in that direction. Religion happens because people don't know Jesus and they don't know the Father. You see, that's a relationship word, known. They're not known by the Father. They don't know the Father. This is the difference between knowing about God, like we know about George Washington, or we know about Abraham Lincoln. This is the difference between knowing about and knowing God. Because they have not known the Father or known me, they settle for stand up, sit down, pray the magic prayer, do the magic deal, all in the midst, and in the midst of all that, they don't know God, even though they're being pious and being part of a religion. No wonder the onlooking world rejects the church. It's not relevant to them. It's not authentic. To them, why bother? But there's all kinds of respect, all kinds of general belief, but they don't know the Father, and when they don't know the Father is a stranger to them. And over time, we become a stranger to His ways. And when that sets in, we create our own scenario with God. It reminds me of the story that I saw on Saturday Night Live with the character Father Guido Sarducci. He would smoke a cigarette, and he had the hat. He was like a Monsignor, and he would go like this. He says, when you get to heaven, there's a bigger scale. And if you do something good, like you help an old lady cross the street, that's like $2.50 on the good side. And then if you do something wrong, like when your wife says to you, do I look fat in this dress? And you know, you've been trained, so you say, you look fine. But you know it's a lie. So that's a smaller lie, so maybe that's 35 cents on the bad side. Now, if you do something really bad, like you kill somebody, that's $25,000. You have to really do a lot of good things to make the difference. So if you get it to heaven, and they add everything up, your whole life, all of the good things you did and all of the bad things you did, imagine if you come up at 35 cents short. So it's interesting and it's kind of funny, but on some level, your good outweighing your bad can make more logical sense than one man, Adam, sinned, and it infected us all with sin, and then one man, now Jesus, pays the penalty for all of our sins. It goes there. It's easier to think of the scale or reconstruct our own thing. And what happens is we work along in our lives with our own construct of what God is and how it works, but we become a stranger to God's ways, truly. And we tack Jesus on the end of our life. And what happens is we get into a place where we should have never been. We should have never gone with her. We should have never signed that thing. We should have never agreed to that partnership. And then things blow up, and then we rail at God because He's supposed to be watching after these things and caring for us. And we're doing our religious thing, but our part of our life is out of whack, and things don't go right, and we rail at God. And God is going, you don't know me. If you did, you wouldn't have found yourself in this mess or done that. If you'd known me, if you'd known my ways, if you had known my will, you would not be in this place. But don't blame me. You don't even know me. but we're respectful, but we're kind, but we're distant and not intimate. You send me a card, you sit in a row. You attended Christmas service 3 years in a row. You gave $100, but you don't know me. You're a stranger, and that makes me a stranger. Do you know what else we become a stranger to? The love of God. And when we become a stranger to the love of God, we start to live our lives in a way that we construct our own God of our own imagination. That's why Jesus said that people will go to ridiculous extremes and think that they're pleasing God. Religion happens because people don't know Jesus and they don't know the Father. Now, you're sitting in a church that was started out of the Jesus movement from the late 60s. And that Jesus movement is part of the DNA of this church. That Jesus movement actually invented the thing called non-denominational. Because we broke away from religion. We broke away from the institution of the church, churchianity. It was about intimacy with God. We did not want to become a religious institution. Did not want to become religious or an institution. So it started with the leaders and the staff and their families, not in routine, not in ritual, everything to do with relationship in its purest form, because religion, my friends, will kill you. Religion will make you a judgmental old person. Religion will alienate you from people, and ultimately religion will make God a stranger to you. So one of the most important things we can talk about is intimacy with God. Intimacy with God mirrors intimacy with people. Think this through. There are 3 things now I'm going to give you to revive your relationship with God. Do you know that you have to be intimate with the person? In order to be intimate, you have to spend time with them. You cannot have intimacy without time. Unrushed, unstructured, just hanging out. I bet you can recall from the beginning when you would open your Bible when it was all fresh and new. It wasn't perfect, but there was a peace that came over you. His presence was there. There's nothing you couldn't face. God was no stranger because there was intimacy, but somehow you've gotten busy. And I'm expressing this because I have learned from this lesson. I'm learning this as we go. Now, instead of 15 or 20 minutes in the morning, you just go to church. Instead of private worship, you serve. Instead of personal, it's kind of become corporate. And it's no longer intimacy. Because we stop giving God private time. You can't have an intimate relationship with anybody if you do not give them time. And you know what else it requires? Transparency. You can't talk to each other in formulas. Good morning, wife. Yes, good morning, husband. Doesn't work that way. In order for there to be intimacy, there needs to be transparency, real, embarrassing transparency. It's authentic. Imagine this prayer, guys. My heart's full of lust, Lord. You know he knows anyway. He doesn't think, oh, I didn't know that. Gee, I wish you hadn't told me that, because now you're really in trouble. No, be real, be honest, be open to praying an R-rated prayer, because he knows anyway. And that's what real transparency looks like. It's the good and the bad all together. When there is intimacy, there's transparency, and you get the good and the bad, and it's real. We've got to be able to pour out our heart in an honest and vulnerable way. If you say, Lord, I'm dismayed at this, no, you're angry. Be honest. State it. Be real. God does not need us to be polite. He sent his son to die for us, to pave the way for this real relationship. Let's not create this polite yet distant thing instead. And the third thing, now here, this may be the takeaway for many of you. This is an interesting thing. It's the most powerful relational tool in the arsenal. Mutual submission. Mutual submission is the most powerful relational dynamic in the world. Here's how it goes. If you know the other party has your best interests at heart, and you have their best interests at heart, that is the fastest way to get to an intimate relationship, when you add time and transparency. If you have my best interests at heart, and I know, and it doesn't matter whether where you are in the hierarchy, it's a boss and an employee, a father and a son, it doesn't matter where you are. If you both are mutually submitted to one another, and here's the punchline of this. God made the first move. By Jesus being on the cross, he submitted himself. Before we even thought about our own souls, God was concerned about it and sent his son. He spared not the comfort of his own son to show us the reality that he had our best interests at heart. When we submit to God in this way, it will take us far outside the realm of ritual and routine and religion and the caricature that is ultimately what God wanted for us. What are we so afraid of? Listen, knock, knock, knock. He stands at the door. I want you to love me. I don't want you to fear me. I don't want you to just respect me. I don't want you to just show up and sit in a row. I certainly don't need your money. I want us to have an intimate friendship relationship. I want some time for you to come to me and be real, embarrassingly transparent, and I want you to surrender to me. And you do not need to fear that, because I've already surrendered to you. I've already paid such a high price to have a relationship with you. You have nothing to fear. I sent my son to die for you, to pay the penalty of all of your sins. Do you think I need to punish you or anyone further? My son paid it all. So we could have true, honest relationship. Why would I mistreat you? I sent my son to die for you. Do you still not know I have your best interests at heart? Through my submission, that you do not need to fear surrendering to me? That is way different than religion, isn't it? And he will not force that. He will simply stand at the door and knock. Think, listen. What do parents want from their children? Not to be their bank. What parents want is time. You can tell when your children are playing you, when they want something. What lights up your heart as a dad is when your kid says, can we just talk about something? You may not even have the solution, but just having that moment. Why does that light your heart up as a father? Because it's about, I love you. If you can tell when your kids are playing you, really, you know your Heavenly Father will know when you're playing him. So listen to how John finishes this letter to the folks in Laodicea. Here I am, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and beat the living daylights out of you for making me stand out here for so long. That's what you fear, isn't it? If you surrender to God, he's going to take my business. He's going to take my money. He's going to take and take and take. That's not true. If you wanted to go home right now and take every single thing that is in your children's room and put it out on the front yard and burn it in a fire, you could do that and they could do nothing about it. He does not need your permission. Do you know why he stands outside the door of your heart and knocks? It's not because he cannot get in. It's because he wants something more than just to be in. He wants to be invited in. How honoring is it for you to invite someone into a relationship and they say, oh, I can only stay for an hour. Your reaction is, well, you know what? Don't come over then. Come over when you have enough time that we can be unrushed. This is what sets this deal apart from every other deal on the planet. So finally, I want to close. If you turn with me to 1 Corinthians 2:9, I want to close with something that God has shared with me in my intimate time with him. Now, I've employed the thing that God has given me, imagination, but I've also used the scriptures to figure out something that is really important, that set me free from my fear of death. Turn to 1 Corinthians 2:9. This is one of those verses that people will recite. You've heard this before, but it's kind of weird. They stop short and don't go further, and it reveals the real meaning. It says, no eye has seen, verse 9, no ear has heard, and no human mind has conceived the things that God has prepared for them, those who love him. When we hear that and we stop right there, we think, well, God has created heaven for us, and it's going to be great, but we can't really get to know what it's about because no eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind has conceived what is there. But look at the next verse. These are the things God has revealed to us by the Holy Spirit. The Spirit searches all things, even the deep things of God. For who knows a person's thoughts except their own spirit within them? In the same way, no one knows the thoughts of God except the Spirit of God. And what we have received is not the spirit of the world, but the Spirit who is from God, so that we may understand what God has freely given us. You see, if we just stop at the point where it's no eye has seen, no ear has heard, we see this picture of heaven where it's you're sitting on a cloud with a harp. And friends, I get it. That seems kind of boring. But let me show you what God has shown me about heaven. And just imagine for a moment, in heaven, we don't have the constraints of time. All of our lives are dealt with this thing that we've created that is the clock and our time. Imagine an existence where there is unlimited amounts of time. And our bodies, everyone else's bodies, we're all ageless. You see, we age as a factor of death being in our world. With death comes things wearing out. Well, when Adam and Eve were created, they weren't created as infants and then they grew into mature adults. They were created as adults. And in the same way, that adulthood, that was at the peak of their existence, like what we would consider about 24 years old. So imagine everybody, it's like the whole thing is like a youth rally, okay? So imagine you have a 24-year-old body and everybody else has a 24-year-old body. I mean, that's kind of exciting, just like that. But now, think about this. None of us have ever seen our grandparents not as old people. Imagine when you meet your grandfather and he's like Studley. How awesome is that going to be, right? And then, you know, there's so many things about our personalities that are like we limit ourselves because of fear or risk. Well, there's none of that because all of that boils down to, well, then I'll get killed. But then there's no death. So with no death, we don't have fear. And then with no, we take showers usually every day, mostly because, I don't know if you know this, and this is slightly disgusting, but our skin cells are constantly dying. And there are parts of us, the bacteria that's on our body, it dies, and that makes stink. And then we need to take a shower and wash that off. Well, imagine a body that doesn't have that. Wow, how awesome is that? No death, no stink. I'm excited about that. I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be great. Now, above all attributes of God, God is the great creator. Creativity is going to be something that we experience in heaven beyond our imagination. But imagine having all the time in the world to learn and to be creative. There are things that I would love to do, but who has the time? I would love to learn how to fluently speak Italian. Who has the time? I would love to learn how to play the xylophone. I love the sound of a xylophone. Who has the time to learn how to play the xylophone? But in heaven, we will have all the time that we need, and maybe there may be Michelangelo and others that are awesome at teaching how to do certain things, and we can learn from them. The creativity is going to be astounding, and I'm looking forward to that. Now, how about this? All of the things about our personality that are weird that are quirks. Now, for example, I had an Aunt Lucille, and Aunt Lucille was, they would call her back then a tomboy. So she was a big lady, okay? And she was excitable, and she would yell a lot, okay? And she would do things that were very intimidating. So like, if you got in an argument with her, it doesn't matter right or wrong, it's who was loudest, and she always won. And sometimes when it's really bad, I saw her do this thing, she picked up the Brooklyn phone book and tore it in half in a fit of rage to show how angry she was, you know? So that's a personality quirk. So personality quirks, fears, different baggage that we acquire in our personality, none of that exists in heaven because all of that is negative. All of that stems from fears and hurts and different wounds and such. Imagine your personality, but you're the best person you've ever been because none of the weird things are there. Imagine the people in your family without all of that baggage. How awesome is that? How exciting? How much can we look? How much greater is that than sitting on a cloud with a harp? You see, when you get a picture of what heaven is, then it kind of becomes this thing I'm looking forward to. When I do a funeral, I go into this even deeper, and I don't stop until everybody is jealous for the dead guy. Because look at what is here. Look at what we're looking forward to. Consider these things. And then, you know, what it says, consider the height from which you've fallen. Repent and go back and do the things you did at the beginning. It also says, be overcome by the blood of the Lamb, the word of his testimony, and not loving our life unto death. The more we clutch onto our lives, the more we lose it. The more we're free of the fear of death, the more we're able to live for God and have an intimate relationship with him. And then lastly, the most awesome thing, and I'd like to invite the band to come back up at this time. There's going to be an amazing banquet, the wedding supper of the Lamb. This is a place and a time where we're going to be able to have an amazing party of all parties, the biggest family reunion of all time, and it's going to be awesome. We have this to look forward to. So as I express all these things, and I say to you, God wants a relationship with you that's intimate, not religion, not ritualistic, not stuck in a pattern, but honest, open. It's the love relationship of your life he's inviting you to enjoy. And then it's here and now in a loving relationship, but also heaven afterwards. And it's so exciting and it's so remarkable. We're looking forward to it in so many different ways. I'm going to ask you now, because the Lord stands at the door of your heart and he knocks. And he's asking to be invited inside. If this is something that you desire, as we bow our heads right now, and the believers are in prayer for those that are in decision, let me make this perfectly clear. God is holy and we are not. We have all fallen short and made mistakes. We've all lied or stole or did something that transgresses God and puts us on the outs from him. God is inviting us to reignite our relationship with him. And he stands at the door as a gentleman and he knocks. If you're here this morning and you want to begin this relationship with this holy God that is beckoning you to receive him, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand right now. Just raise your hand up so that we can see. When Jesus walked on this earth, he called his followers to follow him in a public way. And if this is something that you desire, a loving relationship with a Father that is perfect in heaven, that wants to speak with you intimately and to have a relationship with you, will you raise your hand right now? So now I'm going to ask you one further thing. If you want this relationship with God, if you want a revived relationship with God, I'm going to ask that you would, as the band plays this last song, that you would stand to your feet and that you would come forward, and I'd like to pray for you right here, right now, this morning. So now let's all stand, if we could. Pastor Jason, if you'd lead us in this last song.